Ted. I mean, that's not even the muddle-headed wombat. That is the waffling wombat. That's really terrible. And listening to the Australian people, I've got a better idea, Ted. Listen to engineers, because engineers will tell you if you don't drop net zero, the system won't work. I interviewed on my radio show an engineer who explained to me the way the grid works is the output and the input have to just about balance. So the amount of energy being generated has to equal the load, and the load varies. Whereas with renewables, it peaks early in the afternoon when there's not much load, and then the load peaks in the early evening when there's not much from renewables. He said, you can't make it work in engineering terms. Now, I understand Chris Bowen doesn't understand that. That baffles him. But someone in the Liberal Party's got to understand.
Well, I've got to say, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party, who we heard from just there, that is the worst TED Talk I have ever heard in my life. I tell you who does make sense, though. Chris Ullman was speaking to Peter Credlin earlier this evening about just what a mess the energy policy is if the Liberals continue down this track of net zero. Have a listen.
But unfortunately for the coalition along the way, they're going to tear themselves apart on this on a policy position, because clearly the Nationals, or the large part of the Nationals, have a different view to the Liberal Party. I assume now they'll spend the next 3 years fighting over this. From a Liberal point of view, what will be required to try, without succeeding, to hit net zero will be permanent COVID-level intervention in your lifestyle. We've only just begun to see the tip of this iceberg.
Here's my big problem with what the Liberals are doing at the moment, or maybe I'm misunderstanding them, but they're talking a lot about we're trying to work out why we lost the election and we're going to adjust our policies accordingly. Now, I may not be naive, Freya, but this to me seems exactly the wrong way to go about establishing your policies. What they should be working out is not what will win them an election, but what's the right thing to do for the country. And so they're saying things like, well, we can't dump net zero now because having run with it since Scott Morrison introduced it as a policy, it would be inconsistent to walk away from it. Well, if it's wrong to persist with net zero, then admit your inconsistency, do what's right. Another argument they've said is that, well, it will cast Australia as a global pariah if we ditch net zero. Well, you know, there's plenty of nations, including the United States of America, who seem to be doing pretty well, having cast aside net zero and damn the consequences in terms of reputation. I think the Liberal Party need to search their souls, not about what's going to make them electable, what's the best thing for the country, promote and communicate that well, and then see what happens. But this, well, what can we do to try and curry favour with people, regardless of whether we agree with it or not on principle, is the wrong way to go.
Policy making according to the polls is part of what lost the Liberals the last election. When you follow the pollsters and just go, what do the people want? Turns out you end up valueless, you end up not standing for anything, and as soon as you get any pushback, you backflip, which makes the original policy even worse. And so the Liberals, if they do want to come back, pick a position and defend it and bring the Australian people along with you. For some of the greatest political reforms in our country, they haven't happened because politicians looked at the polls and found that Australians wanted a GST, that they wanted serious tax reform, that they wanted to end the waste. Those things were often extremely unpopular, demanding politicians to make real decisions and cast a vision for this nation and then make the argument. And I think that is what people are so afraid of now. They want to know people are on their side before they even put policy out there. That's not how good politics works.
I agree.
Can I throw in a positive idea? Because it's easy to be negative about the Libs because they've fallen apart and they're continue to fray at the edges. It would be fairly easy to say we can defend our nuclear policy by proposing dropping the moratorium on nuclear science. There's a moratorium, a ban on nuclear science in Australia, and banning any type of science is silly. If they say we're not proposing that we build half a dozen nuclear power stations, just drop the ban on nuclear science. You can justify it on the basis that it allows Australian universities to set up nuclear science departments and it allows them to train people ready for AUKUS. Now, you could put that up in the Parliament, embarrass the government, embarrass Chris Bowen, who'd have to oppose it, and you'd actually get somewhere. There are positive things they could do, and they ain't doing them.
They ain't doing them at all, and it's going to be a while, I think, Freya, before we find out what they're going to do, because they don't know at this point.
And the thing that no one really wants to take into account is the impact this is going to have on the Australian people. China's building 2 new coal-fired power plants every week while we are shutting ours down. And the people who will ultimately pay the price for that are Australians.